This is Bad Movies We Love, part of the Scheist Podcast Network.
Hello, Bad Movie Lovers! Welcome back to Bad Movies We Love. As always, I am your host, Nick Scheist.
The master of this stupid stuff!
During February here on the show, we're not doing rom-coms or romantic movies or anything like that. We're doing love bites. So whether it's vampires or zombies or werewolves or cannibals, we've got you covered. Now, whether it's your first time here or you're a regular,
if you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
That's right, you are a big part of what makes this show what it is. And now you can become a card-carrying member of the resistance by signing up for the new members-only subscription to get access to all the new sub-series, Bad Movie Futures, which I just previewed, by Mon Sci-Fi Con, which is going to be coming very shortly, and Rom-Comathon, along with any other crazy ideas I decide to throw in the mix. Plus, you'll get an invite to the Discord server, and you'll be automatically entered in all future giveaways. It's a good deal for only $5 a month, and you can sign up now at badmovieswelove.captivate.fm/support. If you have questions, feel free to email me at badmovieswelove@thescheist.com. That's THESHEIST.com. Or, if you're the loquacious type, you can call or text the Bad Movies We Love hotline at 1-805-285-3885. Even if you just want to say hi, I'd love to hear from you. Okay, I think that's enough of that for today, because there is, however, a brand new episode on deck to kick off Love Bites month here for February at Bad Movies We Love. And I was joined by self-published author F.C. Schaefer to talk about an 80s horror comedy mashup that was so far off the radar, I don't think I had ever even heard of it. We are talking Richard Wenk's Vamp from 1986.
I thought it stood out among the horror films of the 80s.
Odd that this is a summer movie, but kind of cool in that way because it mixes like the teen sex romp comedy element into the horror genre.
This one just really drew me in. I was impressed with, its energy and its style, and it was just offbeat enough to make it memorable.
The genre clashing and like the mix of comedy and horror, especially for that era, was something that I don't think I had seen before.
I said I want a DVD copy because I want to come back to this movie more than once.
Go, he's gonna rip this guy's head off. He's gonna stab this guy and like staple him to the wall.
Well, the money shot of any vampire film is the reveal of the fangs.
Inside the strip club, I'm like, this is the most well-lit strip club I've ever seen.
This is one time when truly a good example of when less is more.
It didn't feel like it was super cheap.
You don't think you're going to get away with this, do you?
Oh, of course. You know how many people disappear off the face of the earth every year? Not thousands, tens of thousands. You're a statistic, kid.
Why us? Why'd you pick on us?
It's a mistake, okay? It was a little error there, a little communication error. I'm sorry.
We'll be missed. They're going to come looking for us.
Who? Who'd you tell that you were coming here? Nobody tells anybody when they come to a joint like this. Quite a racket, huh?
Fred, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a real pleasure to talk about a great bad movie. I don't think is a bad movie at all, but somehow it got that reputation.
Yeah, after watching it, is my first time watching it. I wouldn't say it's bad either. I mean, I've seen significantly worse movies, so for me, this sort of falls in like the medium range where I can understand why people have issues with it, but also I think it's enjoyable enough to where the majority of those issues aren't something that is going to stop me from watching the film. So it's the perfect kind of movie to talk about on Bad Movies We Love. But since this is your first time here, we met through a mutual friend. Do you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself before we get started?
I am a lifelong movie lover, and I can remember being taken to John Wayne Westerns when I was a small kid by my father. And I think it was watching when I was like 10 or 11, watching Bridge on the River Kwai on TV that really hooked me as a cinephile. I fell in love with storytelling, just getting lost in a story and characters and just letting it take you away. And that's probably why I would say my favorite films are genre films, horrors, westerns, gangsters, anything like that. They're where sort of an element of style and story is paramount. And in more recent years, my love of storytelling has led me to take up self-publishing, and I have written a number of books. Among them, I've written an alternate history genre, and in the horror genre, including a couple of vampire stories. So I know a little bit of where Vamp is coming from.
Yeah, and as a genre fan, this is sort of like a mix of genres as a film, but it feels very much focused in those areas. So I understand why you like this film. I'm excited to get a chance to talk to you about it today. This, of course, is Vamp from 1986, directed by Ricahrd Wenk, screenplay by Ricahrd Wenk and C.W. Cressler, story by Donald P. Borchers and Ricahrd Wenk, and it stars Chris Makepeace, Robert Rusler, Grace Jones, and Dee Dee Pfeiffer. So for people that have not heard of this movie, I mean, I hadn't heard of it. I think I had maybe seen the poster, and then you mentioned it to me, and then all of a sudden I saw it pop up a couple times. So I don't know if it's one of those things where I mention it and then my phone is listening and it starts to suggest things to me based on the eavesdropping that the phone does. But I'm going to take a moment here to set the table and talk a little bit about the production of this film, because Ricahrd Wenk's short film Dracula Bites the Big Apple is what impressed producer Donald Borchers, leading them to collaborate on a thriller spoof called It Came All Night. Unable to sell it, they shifted focus to a vampire film, which Borchers set up at New World Pictures, which is a production studio for this company, and I love seeing that logo at the beginning of films. Initially, apparently, Jerry Lee Lewis was considered for the role of Vic, but the sales team opposed the idea. The filmmakers then pursued Grace Jones, known at the time for Conan the Destroyer and A View to Kill. Jones agreed to the role at a lower fee due to some IRS debts, and filming began in January of 1986, but due to challenges with Jones' performance, much of her dialogue was cut. I think all of her dialogue was cut, actually. So we'll get into that a little bit later, because there is some speculation as to why that happened, maybe a different narrative. But at the time, reviews for Vamp were mixed to negative, citing the humor, originality, along with the performances and plot. However, the film would go on to be a box office success, grossing $4.9 million against its estimated budget of $3.3 million, and ended up ranking 117th in the top 200 for the domestic box office. Over the years, it became more of a cult hit, and Arrow Video actually released a 30th anniversary Blu-ray in October of 2016 that features a high-definition transfer and special features. So, despite this movie's reputation at the time, it still succeeded, still had fans, still went on to gain a cult following, and enough so that it had sort of a reappraisal Blu-ray re-release. Do you happen to have that Blu-ray?
I have an old DVD copy of it.
Mm.
I am one of the I came to Vamp. I actually saw it in the theater in July of 1986 on a really hot Saturday. And I think I remember the other alternative movie to go see was, I believe, Roman Polanski's Pirates with Walter Matthau.
Mm.
And I was like, Walter Matthau, pirate, don't work. And I'm a horror fan from the beginning. So there was no really choice to make there. And I really became a fan of the movie right then. I thought it stood out among the horror films of the 80s. I think I remember reading where during that decade, nearly 600 or maybe more than 600 horror films were released theatrically in the United States. And, Vamp, a lot of them didn't do old school monsters. It was the era of, the slasher film or whatever. And, you just didn't get a vampire film too often. And this one just really drew me in. I was impressed with, its energy and its style, and it was just offbeat enough to make it memorable, I thought. There was a lot in it. There was a lot in it that you remembered.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it. I mean, it's actually, so it came out on July 18th of 86.
That would have been about right, yeah.
Yeah, the day after my birthday. So odd that this is a summer movie, but kind of cool in that way because it mixes like the teen sex romp comedy element into the horror genre. And so that's something that's a little bit more at home with summer movies anyway. But, you and I had kicked around a couple of different titles to discuss, and you gave me maybe like 3 or 4, and I looked through and I was like, all right, I think this is going to be the one that probably works best for what we're going to do here, at least as a good starting point. And you mentioned going to see this in theaters, right? So you saw it in theaters. You immediately felt that it made an impression on you. Was this something that then you went and pursued on home video right after that? Is it something that you saw again fairly, I guess, recently after the first time you saw it? Or is this something that sort of stuck in your mind for a long time, and then over the years, like you really wanted to go and seek it out again?
It's stuck in my mind a long time. It turned up a lot on cable. I'd say late, especially in the 90s. And you don't see it much anymore, but and eventually I said I want a DVD copy because I want to come back to this movie more than once. And usually about once every summer I'll get it out and watch it again. Because to me, certain movies are summer movies, certain movies are winter movies. Vamp is a summer movie. It's like I always watch like Speed or Point Break on the 4th of July. It's that kind of a movie, And I got a DVD, watched it all the way through again for the first time in a long time, and it really held up. To me, it really held up. It was what I had liked about it when I originally saw it was still there. That's not always true about movies, especially from the 80s.
That's fair. And what do you think was the time gap between your most recent watch of it and the previous time?
Probably about a year or two.
Oh, okay. So not a huge difference because, a lot of the times we'll talk about movies that I watched a bunch while they were on cable. It's like, oh, yeah, I watched this maybe 10 times within a couple of years, and then I hadn't seen it in 15 or 20 years. So is this something that you go back to and revisit where it's like, oh, I'm going to throw this on during the summer. Maybe we're doing vampire movies during Halloween or something like that, and you want to bring this to a friend's attention. Is it something that you rewatch fairly frequently?
Yeah, I do. I go back to it every couple of years. It's an easy watch, and it takes you back to pleasant memories. It really does of movie going in the past. That's not really there anymore, sadly.
Yeah, the theatrical experience is very strange these days for a number of reasons. And depending on, what kind of movie you're going to, you're going to maybe get a little bit more of a mixed bag. But, we'll focus on this movie for now. Don't have to get into the whole current theatrical nightmare that can sometimes present itself. This movie, though, has an IMDb score of a 5.9, which is not terrible. Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 40, audience score of 49. It has a Just Watch score of 62, which is pretty good, and a Letterboxd of 3.1, so right in line with that 62. Bad Movies We Love, total score of 54.5 out of 100. So right in the sweet spot for the movies that I like to talk about on this show. Not too high, not abysmally low, but right in that middle range where it seems like people really disliked it or people really liked it. And then it sort of averages out to be about in the middle. And I think I'm probably leaning towards the side of really enjoying it. I really had no idea what I was getting into. So the genre clashing and like the mix of comedy and horror, especially for that era, was something that I don't think I had seen before. So it was a very nice experience for me to be able to watch it. And as you can see by the background, I felt like the neon-soaked nightlife of this movie. I don't know why everything was green and pink. I don't know why it was green and pink inside the sewer, but it just looked cool. And I was totally happy to see the production team and the director just be like, it doesn't have to make sense. The sewer is going to be lit in these colors, and that's the way we want it. And it gave it a very distinct look that I appreciate the commitment to. So
I thought to me, it reminded me a lot of some of the more cheaply produced music videos of the 80s you would see on MTV, or I read other appreciations of it online, and some people say it reminds them of Italian horror films of Mario Bava or Dario Argento, that they thought that they were borrowing that idea. I don't know, but it seems to have come from somewhere, and that's one of the distinct things about it. It does have a kind of this neon atmosphere, late night nightmare that you can't get out of, sort of way they were trying to kind of set the mood.
Yeah,
and I think it's very effective, and it's one of the things you really do remember about the movie.
Yeah, at first I thought it was like, okay, it's only in the strip club that is going to have this weird sort of neon color palette. And then when they go out into the street, still there. When they go in the sewer, still there. And so like as soon as they get to the strip club, like the whole second half of the movie is sort of like drenched in these colors. And I love that it's like the commitment that you have to have in order to light these certain like street scenes this way. You have to have very smart lighting techs that know like when these colors are not going to overlap. And then even with close-ups, it's like you have someone being lit in the front with a green light and lit from the side with a pink light. And so you have these like very stark lines that are created like along the facial structure with the two lighting sources. So it's just like very intentful and intelligent lighting technique. Whether or not you want to see a movie that's like lit like that the entire time, I mean, that's a little bit more subjective, but the actual positioning of the lighting, both in the interior and exterior, is very, very well done. And I like the look of it. I'm a sucker for neon. So when I see it, I'm like, hey, I wish more movies look like this. But I mean, that could just be a me thing.
The cinematographer was Elliot Davis, who I looked up, and he's worked with Coppola, Soderbergh, among others, Spike Lee and Hal Ashby.
Quite the resume.
Yeah, they had some talent there.
Yeah, they did. And I think it shows because the movie looks good. Even in the beginning, before they get to the club and all the lights sort of change to match this particular palette, it feels like a well-produced movie. You know, it doesn't feel as low budget as the budget suggests, even though reading about it, I see that like the budgetary restrictions obviously caused a couple of issues for them, but it didn't feel like it was super cheap in the way that it looked, where sometimes you can just watch a movie and it feels like there's a lot of corners being cut. It just has a weird look to it that I'm like, I don't know. Is this like a made for TV movie? And this didn't feel like that.
No. Yeah, stack it up against a lot of other cheaply made horror movies from the 80s. This looks very good. Very good.
Yeah, and
a lot of, especially movies set in urban settings. It looked like they were shot on a half dead end of a street in an alley. Is about all they. And and this one is. This one looks like they got the bang for the buck all the way. Whatever.
Yeah, well, there's also a lot of sort of 80s horror movies that sort of only want to like shoot things at night. And so I don't know if that's like a technique, because it's like, hey, you want to hide some of the environment that you're shooting in and just sort of make it feel a little bit more gothic and more menacing, where like this movie during the day is very bright. And then even at night, like inside the strip club, I'm like, this is the most well-lit strip club I've ever seen. Like it's so bright in there. And then we get into these like large like swaths of pink and green. And for a movie of this era to know like what the competition is, because this isn't like, hey, we're coming out of the slasher heavy end of the 70s and like this isn't a 1981 movie, and this isn't like a late 80s transitioning to the 90s movie. This is right in the middle of the 80s, so it knows its competition. I'm glad that it decided to take some chances and set itself apart in that way.
Yeah, it does. And also I would commend the special effects are not bad. Again, compared to some of the other cheaper horror movies from the 80s, they're as good as they need to be in a little bit more.
Yeah, this isn't a movie that is focused on its gore effects. Like it's not a horror movie that is where its identity is like, hey, we want to showcase our practical effects. We're not like here to like show you all these different variety of kills of like, oh, he's going to rip this guy's head off, he's going to stab this guy and like staple him to the wall, you know, like a lot of slashers do, where you're going to kill maybe 7 to 10 people throughout the course of the movie. You're going to kill them all in a variety of creative and different ways. This movie uses the special effects to service the story that it's telling. So we don't get a ton of effects or gore shots, but the ones that they do present are well done. Like the transition scene, the first time we see Grace Jones actually become a vampire, Katrina, you know, that first transition scene is well shot. It's well edited. I felt like the prosthetics and the makeup team all did a really good job there. So it works. And then, you know, you get another scene of her when she rips out the heart of her assistant or whoever. You know, that the shot
Asian girl. Yeah.
Yeah. It's shot very specifically where it's like, we're going to do this all behind the camera. So that way, you know, we're going to focus on the result of what happened, not on the like, ooh, look how gory this is part of it. Yeah, she's still holding a human heart at the end of it, but you don't have to see the heart. You don't have to see the hand going into the chest. So I think very intentful and sort of like intelligent understanding of how can we make this look good? How can we make it effective? And how do we not maybe lose the viewer in a story where we're trying to inject horror here? When you're playing with comedy, right, which a lot of this movie is, if you run into a point in the film where maybe one of your makeup effects like doesn't look good enough, all of a sudden like the comedy is now bleeding over into the horror, and then maybe you lose the audience part of it there.
You're laughing at the wrong parts.
Exactly. So I feel like, you know, there was a lot of smart choices that went into how the visual effects were shot in this movie, and I really appreciate that. I think like good editing always goes a long way, and it's sort of like one of my favorite things of looking back at movies from the 80s and 90s that are full of practical effects, 70s as well, is like, how do you edit the scene? Because there's a lot of times where if you don't edit it correctly, it's going to come across the wrong way. Sometimes you linger on something too long, and it just, especially with makeup effects, like when we know it's fake, you don't want to like oversaturate us with it, because then it's like, okay, now as the viewer, what are you asking of me? To just appreciate the makeup effect? Or are like you wanting me to have the intention of the scene, which is to make me jump or squirm or feel physically ill or whatever the intent of the actual gore is?
Well, the money shot of any vampire film is the reveal of the fangs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they do that very well.
Yeah, it's a great one.
And also practically, when they do the ripping out of the heart or whatever, to have done that, a big gory effect from the front side would have cost a lot more money.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, this is one time when truly a good example of when less is more.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of less is more, and I also feel like you maybe have to be a little bit more creative with more restrictions. So as a filmmaker, as a design team, you're like, how do we make this look good on camera, knowing that we cannot spend an exorbitant amount of money on this? Okay, here's how we strategically put this together to make it look good and be effective in that scene. I always have a big appreciation for that.
Yeah, it a little subtlety can go a very, very, very long way.
Yeah, it seems like subtlety is an art form that is lost these days, but when I see it, I still appreciate it. Well, speaking of subtlety, this is a not so subtle segue. I asked you last night if you would want to do the honors of preparing a synopsis haiku to take us through Vamp.
Okay, I tried my best.
Fair enough.
Poetry is not my thing, but here's what I wrote. In a sleazy club, boys seek strippers, find bloodsuckers instead.
Oh, that's pretty good. I like that better than mine. That's very matter of fact, to the point. Very good synopsis, actually. Mine, not so much, but I'll do the honors as well. This strip club sure bites. Revenge of the Nerds versus Vamps. Grace Jones to the bones.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that was, I don't know. That was the first line I had because I started writing it at the end. And then I was like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work, but I want to leave that in there. So thank you for playing along. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. My meager poetry skills don't get worked out very often.
Well, I know. I sort of like wanted to do it to give myself a reason to like get in the habit of using that muscle that I don't flex very often. So it's fun. Sometimes it's disastrous. Sometimes it's significantly better. This, for me, was one that was kind of middle of the road, but I liked yours quite a bit. So give yourself some credit.
Thank you.
Well, now we're going to go back in time, all the way back to the summer of 1986, and we're going to take a look at the trailer for this movie and see how it was marketed, because I have no idea, based on the genre matchup, how this was presented to potential audiences.
Before we rewind for the trailer, it's time for a quick word from today's sponsor. Do you hear that? When you're at the strip club for a night out with the boys and you hear that, you know your night's about to suck, and not in a good way. That's why Makepeace Industries wants to make sure you are protected against those pesky creatures of the night with the newly redesigned Instant Daytime Keychain Defense Light. Unlike traditional UV lamps, this ultra-compact sun gun emits UVA, UVB, and UVC rays and packs a whopping 6,000 lumens of high-density synthetic sunlight. The Instant Daylight keychain has been lab-tested on a variety of vampire species with a 100% success rate. Some trials have shown complete incineration in as little as 5 seconds. The beam is in fact so strong, it's even been shown to be effective in blinding familiars, albino gang members, and everyday people. So when some hungry bloodsucker has their sights set on you as their next meal, don't make war, make peace with the Makepeace Instant Daytime Keychain Defense Light. And now, back to the show.
So let's grab that. Okay. I think that I'll turn that down a little. I love that New World Pictures logo. We start with the exit from the sewer.
Did you ever have one of those nights?
Oh, wow.
Hey, where are we going? Doesn't matter. What counts is that you're my buddy. My date didn't start off too well.
I did like seeing them film in downtown LA.
We be looking for ya.
Are we jumpy tonight?
And then it got worse.
We're here.
And then,
Gentlemen, I give you Katrina.
you're just what I'm looking for. Why'd you pick on us?
It was a mistake. It was a little error there, a little communication error. I'm sorry.
Uh-oh. Let's just get out of here. This is not really happening.
Hello, baby.
God, you look awful. What happened?
It does have a weird feel to it. I can't
was
quite
nearly
peg
hung.
it.
I got into a fight with a psychotic albino. A cockroach, my best friend disappeared, and then I'm nearly assassinated by a runaway elevator. Anyone can have an off night. This is fantastic!
Vamp, a comedy with bite.
Okay.
And of course, Grace Jones.
Well, that is some trailer there.
Yeah, they use Grace as a big selling point. That was...
I mean, I would too, but then strange to use her as a sales pitch and then she has no dialogue.
I think that works in the film. Is a good way to do... They don't overdo the big bad.
I personally didn't mind her not speaking. Like, her physicality is a big part of the role and a part of a lot of her performances as well. So it's not something to me where I'm like, oh, I felt like she needed to be speaking. It's like, she's an ancient vampire. You kind of know her motivation. You use the characters around her to spell out whatever you need to spell out. It's like, yeah, she's a vampire. She eats people. I get the idea, right? She doesn't have to explain any of that to me. I found it interesting that in sort of like the plot, not the plot description notes, but the production notes said that there was issues with her performance or challenges with her performance. And then reading more about the movie, I read that it was her choice to play the role in a very physical way and not have any dialogue. So I don't know which side of that story is true. Do you?
I've read both of those things too. I don't. Maybe after she read the dialogue they wrote, she thought it could have been that case where she just suggested, I'll just wing it here. Let's just do it that way.
Yeah,
and it does work. She suggests a lot with her eyes or a gesture or whatever. We get the idea. She's the big bad queen. And all these other people are her sort of clan or whatever, and they all serve her. And they've got this set up in this bar in this sleazy section of Los Angeles where they feed on losers and transients or whatever who come in the bar who have no body, the people who won't be missed.
Yeah, there's a line of dialogue from the MC, Sandy
Vic.
Barron, who plays Vic. It's later in the movie, but he's saying like, $1 all you can drink. So for $1, you come in and you drink as much as you want. So you basically black out, and then they take you in the back room and eat you.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, there was one question I forgot to ask you before we hit the trailer, so I'm gonna ask you now. We talked about the movie a little bit. We've sort of speculated as to reasons why we like it, where its weaknesses are, but just if you had to guess, why do you think is the primary reason someone would say that this is in fact a bad movie?
I think it didn't do well with critics, who I think were just sort of oversaturation of horror by that point in the 80s. It's got a lot of, I think, decent actors in it, but none of them have particularly heavyweight reputations. It's sort of the same kind of bias that comes against genre movies. It just seems to have gotten lost in the crush of horror in the 80s and it found a cult audience, but it never quite found the mass audience that, say, Fright Night and The Lost Boys found, which came out one the year before and the other the year after. It sort of fell between the cracks there. And it has the look. Some people would, not me, but some people would take the look of it and write it off as just a cheap horror movie. I mean, I think it often just got dismissed without people really taking a look at it or watching it all the way through. I think that hurt it. Its reputation initially.
I think it's a good point that you mentioned also Fright Night and Lost Boys, because those movies to me feel like very dialed in vampire horror movies that have levity and comedy included, versus this, which is a comedy that then is infusing horror elements as you go. So this movie maybe like would be competing with like Porky's or something like that, like Revenge of the Nerds, like existing sort of in that same spectrum and then folding in horror elements into that kind of story, versus like The Lost Boys, where it's like, okay, here we're going to have this be scary, but also for teenagers, and we're going to have some comedic elements in it. So maybe like the imbalance when competing with stuff like that, that's a little bit more focused on what it wants out of the film, versus this is like, okay, we want you to be laughing. We also want you to like gasp at the horror, and like finding the right tonal balance between those may be a little bit more difficult.
That's probably, yeah, I would say that some people just didn't get the joke.
Yeah.
Just plain didn't get the joke.
Yeah, I think
they
wanted definitely...
They wanted a horror movie and they got comedy. They wanted a comedy and they got horror, and they just didn't, the peanut butter didn't go with the jelly.
Yeah, there's definitely a time in my life or like a situation where I could imagine sort of just not vibing with this. Like if I went to the movie theater expecting like a vampire horror film and I got this, I would probably be disappointed. If I went into the theater expecting sort of Revenge of the Nerds frat style comedy and I got this, I'd be like, okay, that's not what I thought it was going to be. I think this was the perfect scenario for me to watch it. I had no idea what it was. I didn't look up anything about it beforehand. I'd only seen the poster. I assumed it was about vampires at the bare minimum. So I was like, okay, that's fine. And then where the movie starts, I'm like, okay, like this is not what I was expecting out of this film, but let's see where this goes. And I just had a lot of fun with it. So for me, it was the perfect storm for me to watch something like this. And it's one of my favorite things about doing this show is that I get to find like weird stuff like this where I've never seen it before, but I know somebody who really loves it and is happy to share. So thank you for that.
Well, all vampire movies, I think, get a cult to a certain degree, just about.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like the nature of making a vampire movie. Like you'll find your audience sooner or later as more people see it. And, maybe it takes 30 years, but like I said, you and I talked about it, but this was in private messages. I hadn't talked to anybody about it in public. And then all of a sudden I saw somebody else on Twitter on my timeline mention it. And then I saw it again. And I was like, what is going on all of a sudden? This isn't a Hallmark anniversary for it. But apparently just whatever. It was out in the universe. This is a great time. Nosferatu is in theaters. So I feel like this is probably the best time to talk about this movie right now. But how do you feel about doing a little bit of trivia?
Sure.
Time for trivia.
All right. Well, it's not super difficult. So like as long as you did a little bit of reading, you probably have a decent chance at it. So, all right. Question number 1. During Grace Jones' initial appearance in the film, she does a striptease on a human-shaped chair. That chair was made from a body cast of whom?
It wasn't Dolph Lundgren, was it? That was her.
It was Dolph Lundgren. Yes, it was her then boyfriend at the time, Dolph Lundgren. And
I remember. I kind of remember that. People used to speculate what kind of monster mutant children they would breed or whatever. I remember the jokes on Howard Stern about that. That was.
I mean, here at the show, we love Dolph. We did an entire month on just Dolph Lundgren movies. He's the most covered actor on the show. It wasn't intentional. It was just before we even did Dolph Lundgren month, I had already done 3 movies that were Dolph Lundgren films. And then the first movie I did after Dolph Lundgren month also featured Dolph Lundgren. So he's always welcome around here. And I had to include that question just because he was the answer. So you're off to a good start. You got 1 already. Question number 2. The song that Grace Jones dances to during her striptease was sung by her, but not included on the movie soundtrack. It was titled Vamp in the credits, but Jones released a heavily reworked version of the song on her Bulletproof Heart album, and that song was titled what? That's a tough one.
I have no idea about that.
It's called Seduction Surrender.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have had no idea either. But like I said, the trivia sometimes is difficult, sometimes it's easy. But based on what I had in front of me, I was like, this is an interesting question. So I feel like I want to ask it anyway. All right, we'll move on to the third and final question for trivia. During the frat initiation, the leader of the group is lip syncing his audio. That audio was provided by which famous Canadian actor?
I've read this, but I've forgotten somewhere along the line.
It's in The Sound of Music. Also, Return of the Pink Panther.
Christopher Plummer?
That's right.
Okay.
Would have never guessed. I don't know how they got that from him, but...
Well, I just have no idea.
Just a friend of the production.
I hope he got paid.
Me too.
That is one of the last people I would suspect of doing that.
I know. I'm reading that like, okay, very interesting choice here, but I kind of like it. Would have liked to see him in the movie, maybe a little bit more, but that's fine. It was a cool little tidbit of trivia, but a little bit of bonus trivia. For no points here. Apparently, the scene where Grace Jones first shows her teeth and her disgusting toenails as she transforms into the full-on vampire, and she bites Robert Rusler's throat, the prosthetic teeth went through his latex neck into his actual neck and drew some blood. I don't think it was like anything really horrible, but yeah, bit through the prosthesis all the way into his actual neck and made him actually bleed.
Wow.
So those were some legitimate fangs they made for her.
That's what you call commitment.
Absolutely. It's like, no, just keep filming. Also, let's see, due to the small budget, Grace Jones got a lot of her wardrobe items from her designer friends because big in the art world, music world, design, fashion, all that. So just pulled in some favors. Always helps to have someone like that on the team. Tina Turner was considered for the role of Katrina, which I could have seen that, honestly, but I would have liked to see like some like Sing then, I guess, maybe, or I don't know. It feels maybe like
Yeah,
asking too
I
much,
could
but
see her in it, but I think Grace was the better choice.
yeah.
She had a screen presence that
absolutely
really worked in this, especially in a part with no dialogue, no real dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's got like a certain quality in her eyes that is very intense. Like whether or not like I think she's wearing like very specific contacts for this, but like just her stare, her gaze is very intense. And so when you're having this character who's almost like animalistic in their behavior, like they don't talk, they just like sort of eat and command respect and sort of get people to do their bidding. I think it's very important for an actor with that kind of like physical power and prowess on screen. She did a fantastic job with that.
And she has a great cackle too.
Yeah, she does.
Great evil cackle, which goes a long way.
It does. It's important for a villain. The film was originally banned in Ontario, Canada, but New World eventually appealed and the film was passed with the restricted label. And there's one more little piece of trivia I found interesting about this human-like chair is that the paint on both the chair and on Jones' body during that initial dance were done by the late graffiti artist Keith Haring, who was a friend of Jones. So again, just helps to have friends in high places, especially when you're making a low-budget film. It's like, hey, we've got like A-level fashion designers coming in and lending us a hand. We've got like world-renowned artists coming in and lending us a hand. We've got one of the bigger action stars in the 80s just using his body to sculpt this chair. So yeah, a lot of personal favors, but maybe another reason why Grace Jones was the correct choice, because people just wanted to help her do this.
Yeah, it shows off. The extra effort shows up on screen.
Yeah, this movie has character. I think it's got it in spades, and there's no shortage of entertaining things that happen in this movie. But because you got the 2 questions right on the trivia, we're going to go over to Spin the Wheel, where you're going to get some other questions that are more like hypothetical brain teasers than trivia questions. So we'll see what you get here first. Okay.
All right.
So this is a casting question. If you could swap out one actor from this movie, who would you choose and why?
Swap out. Would you have swapped out maybe Chris Makepeace and put maybe Corey Haim in the part? That would have been
I could see that. Little like punch up the comedy part a little bit more, you know, because it's not like Chris was bad. It feels like there was moments where the movie is very much like leaning into the comedy, and just like his style of delivery doesn't get it past a certain point. Whereas you put someone like Corey Haim or even Corey Feldman in that role, you would have like a much more heightened delivery. Especially, I'm thinking of the scene where he's complaining about how bad his day was, and I feel like something like that specifically.
Well, one thing I have noticed upon repeated viewings of, and maybe this is because the director was a first-time director, but some of the line readings, especially between Keith and Amaretto, which is Chris Makepeace and Dee Dee Pfeiffer, Michelle's sister, the line readings feel a little rushed. It's like, there wasn't enough rehearsal or direction or whatever. I've noticed that in a couple of scenes where
I could see that. I saw somebody else complain about that too, so I don't think you're alone there.
Sometimes maybe a different actor would have picked up and known. Somebody needs to know a little bit more about pacing.
Mm. Yeah.
and inflection.
Yeah, I could
And,
see that.
and maybe it was, they were under a tight schedule to get it shot, and they just, hey, we'll shoot it twice and pick one we want. It could have been that situation. But I do notice that some of the, especially in Chris Makepeace's scenes, the dialogue delivery could be better.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, well, let's go to the second question on the wheel. If you could ask one character from the film a question, who would it be, and what's the question?
It would be to Vic. Where were you when you had that last drink of whiskey before the final one in the film?
Yeah, that's a fun one. I mean, because he said he hadn't drank in 75 years?
75 years, which in 1986 would have been 1911.
Was he on the Titanic or something?
Yeah. Yeah, he's sort of the really interesting character in the film. It is a great, because there's a lot of stuff that's sort of implied. This is the bar is filled with has-beens and never-weres, and Vic is sort of an old showbiz guy, and the bouncer Vlad is played like an old mafia guy. He could be Luca Brasi's brother. It's that kind of, they're sort of there with those personas, and you sort of get the feeling, who were they? Who are they? How did they get there? There's a story there. There's something there.
Yeah, and I'm curious if the two of them had known each other for a long time as well before sort of ending up in this strip club where they're essentially slaves to Grace Jones' character.
Vic is definitely a Renfield type.
Yeah.
Down to the eating the bugs.
True, right? He's got a nice little jar full of live cockroaches that he munches on, and I'm like, oh, okay. He's got this right at the desk. You just walk in. Hey, please take a seat. Nobody notices the jar of roaches that he's snacking on.
Yeah,
but
that's
for
one
him.
of the sort of random funny things in the movie. They've got a jar of cockroaches on the bar. How do they keep them from crawling away? But
yeah,
there they are.
They've got a big bucket of roaches. They just refill it as needed. But I did love that because, we get the scene where Chris Makepeace goes up to the desk, and I don't know if he thinks they're nuts or something, but he just
evidently, just absentmindedly puts one in his mouth, and then
he didn't even look at the jar reflex when he reached in there. I don't now that we're talking a little bit about some of the other cast choices, got to talk about Billy Drago.
Oh, yes.
Because I wrote down, I was like, he always makes a movie better, and went to some extreme lengths for this film, including bleaching his hair and eyebrows to play the leader of an albino street gang.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's one of those other things. It's a sort of random. Who are these people, and why are they here? Except they've come. They're sort of a red herring.
Yes,
because they walk in and you think these characters are vampires or whatever when you first see them, but they're not. They're just street hoodlums or whatever.
Yeah,
I believe one of the gang is played by Dar Robinson. Who he was a renowned stuntman in Hollywood, and he played an albino hitman in, was it the Burt Reynolds movie Stick, or one of the ones right along about that time in the 80s? But I noticed he was in the credits.
Yeah, his face is familiar, so wouldn't be surprised. Looks like he's known for To Live and Die in L.A., Lethal Weapon, Rollerball, Bachelor Party, doing stunts and all that. So it's pretty cool.
But Billy Drago was such a unique presence. He
in everything he does. Yeah,
always kind of sounded like he was high on something. even when he played Frank Nitti.
Yeah, I mean, It's possible that he was. But like, if you gave me sort of like a list of things that I would expect in this movie, the albino street gang was not something that I had on the bingo card. So first, like, they obviously run into them at the restaurant.
Yeah.
Sort of caught, that's where the commotion, the first dust up is. And he mentions to him at the time, like, they ordered 6 coffees. So, there's reinforcements, but he's also like, let's get out of here. So then by the time they show back up later in the movie, I was like, well, I wasn't 100% sure if we were going to see these guys again. And then everybody that gets out of the car is albino. And I'm like, oh, so it's an entire albino gang, which again is a very, very specific choice to make in this movie. But it is a lot of fun. And like you said, while it is a red herring, like, this is not the incident in the movie, and it's not like the reason behind the movie, but it could have been its own movie of these kids. They're going out to like make this party happen. They're going to a strip club, and then they just cross paths with this gang, and then that becomes like what the movie is. And for a moment, it does become that movie. There's a car chase that involves a forklift, or no, it's a garbage truck.
Yeah, that was one of the things Siskel and Ebert complained about. There was too many. Said it had good parts in it, but then it just goes into all these chases and stuff, which, as they make plain in their review, they'd seen a lot of in a lot of movies in the mid '80s. They sort of they say, well, they just sort of go there to a car chase or whatever to add some action to the movie. I think seeing it now, to me, it works. It's part of the flow of the movie. I could see maybe why somebody in the mid '80s, who every other movie had car chases in it, you might have been overloaded on that by then.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the movie doesn't become like a car chase movie, but I feel like as maybe a movie of the 80s, if you want to have a big action set piece, that might be the most achievable one to do. So I had fun with it, though. I love that he's waiting for the guy who's unparalleled parking his way out of that spot to be able to escape. I mean, and he's just ramming back and forth into the cars.
It's a chase on a sidewalk, which is something you didn't see that every day.
Nope.
Yeah,
it was fun. For me, it was fun.
Yeah.
I also this young girl actress, I don't know her name, but as soon as I saw the little girl, I was like, please tell me she's a vampire. And then of course later we find out that she is, and we get one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is the vampire doll just bit onto this guy's arm out in the middle of the street as he swings it around. And that scene goes on for a lot longer than I thought it would, but I love it because, like, the doll, obviously you're not going to do that with like a real 10-year-old girl strapped to your arm.
No.
So they have to make like a doll, but the doll is sort of like frozen in like a certain posture. So like even when it's getting swung around, it's very rigid still. But I don't know. I love that scene. I found it hilarious.
Well, that is a real horror trope that I have found in my couple of books I have written that a lot of people are fans of, is the evil child in a horror. The vampire child or whatever. You can never go wrong by having an evil little girl. That's something that stirs the pot really good.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I was rooting for it. And you see some child out on the street in downtown Los Angeles in the middle of the night and they're walking around. I'm like, hope she's a vampire, because otherwise she's really way out of her element. And fortunately for her, she actually is a vampire, and we get a really fun scene out of that. So I guess I had a question about Dee Dee Pfeiffer's character, in that she's the only person that works at the bar that isn't a vampire or like a familiar, right? She's not. Yeah. And I like,
well, they do tease it that she might be, but then no.
Yeah.
She's not.
They tease it throughout the whole movie, like all the way up until the very, very end, where he still like doesn't quite believe that she's not a vampire at that point. He's like, hey, come here, let me show you something, and like just shine sunlight in her face. But
she takes offense at it, really,
which as she should, I think, at that point. But I guess I'm just curious. I'm like, how do you end up working in a vampire bar where like all the strippers are vampires, where everybody that works there is a familiar, like a Renfield type of character, yet she just somehow is like, no, this is just her job. She just strolled in and just like got the job at the club as a waitress and didn't end up becoming a vampire. Like,
well,
was she on the road to being initiated into the vampire club?
Yeah, it is a movie that some of the plot logic doesn't always add up.
Oh, of course.
When the Robert Rusler character is initially killed,
mm-hmm.
and they throw him out in the trash.
Yeah. Literally,
and then
in the
5
dumpster.
minutes later, he's been revived as a vampire. And of course, I know when you do vampire movies, you can play with the vampire lore a lot. So my thinking on that was, okay, when you in this world, when they bite and drain people, they'll die, but in a certain period of time, they'll come back as a vampire. So they throw all their victims out in the trash, and they've got this arrangement where this guy comes by and picks up the bodies, and probably takes them to an industrial incinerator down the street somewhere, burns them all up. That way, there's no bodies around for anybody to find, and there's no other revived vampires.
Yeah, that's
crawling all over the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think that checks out, because like on my first watch, I'm like, so they know that you make more vampires by biting people, but then they just throw the dude in the trash.
Yeah.
Not expecting him to be a vampire. I was like, I didn't think about it very long, but after the fact.
And there's a point where they say, okay, we got to fix this. Go bring the trash back in.
Yes.
So my thing is, they bring him back in. He revives as a vampire. That's he's allowed to come back. The other victims are thrown in the trash and they're burned up, and that's the end of them.
Maybe
it's one of those things you're not supposed to think too hard on.
And I didn't. So they did their job there. But one thing I did think about was Keith finds his friend dead in the dumpster and then doesn't immediately just like run away. Like, go grab your other buddy inside and just leave. So did I miss something as to like, did they try to leave and were being held hostage? Because he mentions at one point that they've tried to leave and they can't, but I've seen him outside the building already, multiple times actually at that point. So I'm like, okay, can he actually not leave? Did they try to leave? Did I miss something?
Yeah, it's that's where the plot logic kind of falls down a little bit.
Yeah.
Where, it's it's like the slasher movie. Why doesn't anybody just call the police right away when they find a body?
Yeah.
It's that kind of situation.
Well, if I go to a strip club and I find my friend dead in the dumpster in the back, I'm not going back inside. Like, we'll call the cops at that point and get the hell out of there. But it does. It sets up, I think, the punchline, or like the return of AJ in like a couple of scenes later to scare his buddy in the bathroom. And that has one of my favorite scenes in the movie too, where AJ leans over and like checks his hair in a non-existent mirror. There's a place where a mirror should be above the sink, but there's no mirror.
And earlier you've seen two of the strippers doing each other's makeup.
Mm-hmm.
This is before the reveal of the vampires.
Yeah.
And it just sort of looks weird, but then you think, oh, of course, they couldn't see each other. They couldn't see their face to put their makeup on.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they can see each other. So, hey, they're putting their makeup on.
Yeah, they were smart enough to remove the mirrors from the building so that you wouldn't notice that there's somebody washing their hands that has no reflection standing directly in front of you. So like little subtleties like that tell you that the movie was actually like thought through pretty well. So
yes,
even though, yeah, maybe there's some weaknesses in like the plot or the script or whatever, like there was a lot of thought that went into the design and sort of the mythology behind this place. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah. A lot of people. Yeah. One of the good things about writing vampire fiction is you can play with the mythology to suit you.
Yeah.
But it's like anything else. Once you set the rules, you have to stay within them.
Very true. Because then all of a sudden it's like, oh, playing fast and loose with vampire lore here, and got to be careful there.
There are no sparkling vampires here.
No, not in this one. I mean, well, they never made it to the one that made it into the daylight, just dissolved as you would expect. So
and that was a pretty well done scene. That was,
it was.
Again, the special effects, I give them credit. Although I read somewhere it's not on my DVD cut, but it's, I think, on another one that came out that you can see at the scene where Grace Jones' bony arm gives them the finger.
Yes, I saw that.
You can see on one cut, you can see the technician holding the prop.
Oh, I didn't see that.
That's on some versions. It's not on mine. But they had the camera too wide, and they actually just caught that technician's hand.
Well, maybe I'll have to go back and watch that last few minutes again. But I did love that scene. I love the style of the effects used for that, like how it became sort of like fiery, but also like liquid and waxy. And it looks like it was also shot upside down, because you're having a lot of like the dripping going upward on camera, it looked like. So I'm like, okay, maybe if you had like a wax face that you were melting from the top and shooting from the bottom, but then you just reverse that when you're actually like editing the film together. Just some cool techniques in there, I thought.
It gives you the impression that something, the vampire is dying in the sun and something is bursting forth now from within. It gives you that effect. Which
I really liked it.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of different ways you can do what a vampire in the sun. They can burn up, they can dissolve, and there's even a part of the lore that says all they really do is they just go back to corpses again. They just
we've
go to sleep.
Seen that too.
Whatever.
Yeah, I did feel like maybe stashing all of your crew's entire like coffin setup in a place where just like a very loosely slotted wooden board can shake out of the way, and all of a sudden there's a ton of sunlight in the room. Maybe not the best storage area for the coffins, but a great scene to have a climax for the film.
Well, sometimes as a writer, that's what you got to do. You got to make you got to make this work. And there's a thing is the writing advice is don't write something just because you think it looks cool. But because then you have to make it relevant to the story. You got to make it work.
Yeah.
And I think it's a case of you don't think too hard about it, and it works.
Yeah, we've seen it in other movies where there'll be like sunlight peeking in, and then someone sledgehammers the wall or shotguns the wall to like create bigger holes so there's more light coming in, right? So we've seen this idea happen.
The great
before.
One is, I think, was it the Horror of Dracula, where Peter Cushing rips the drapes down, and blood's dragged Christopher Lee with sunlight. It's.
Yeah. So again, not the first and only time that we would see something like this. I just love that in that sequence, he like is petty enough to like trap her between the two beams of light and then kill her, like to let her know almost like I beat you. And now he could have just left her trapped there, and then until nighttime, like they would have time to flee, but he chose to do it very specifically. And then, you're stuck. Okay, now I'm going to click. That's why she gives him the finger at the end.
Yeah.
because he did it in, I think, that particular manner. He didn't just like pull all of the like wooden slots out at once. He went very meticulously about killing her and doing
he makes
it
her
in a
suffer.
way.
He makes her suffer.
Exactly. And
you ignore the possibility that she could have just jumped out of the sunlight and got, escaped back into the shadows. There was nothing stopping her from doing that, really.
Yeah, other than he just would have chased her and knocked all the other boards down. But, I like the sort of the symbolic nature of that scene, and that like you have these two very strong beams of light trapping this creature of darkness. And like it's so agonizingly painful to like be exposed to the light at all that the thought of going through that is like unfathomable. It's like close to instant death, and maybe it would have been, who knows. But great scene, I think, there to end the movie in a way that is like both fun and still pretty true to like the horror genre specifics as well. So that's a time where like everything sort of comes together, lines up the right way, and it puts a nice exclamation on the end of the film.
It builds to a really good climax. I mean, it pays off everything at the end.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, well, is there anything that you wanted to mention that we didn't get a chance to talk about yet?
Let's see. My notes. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reviews online sort of asked, well, did Quentin Tarantino steal this plot for From Dusk to Dawn? Which, there are a lot of similarities there. But I don't, my feeling about it is it's a basic horror trope here where you have innocent or unwary people wander into the lair of the big bad or the great evil that wants to victimize them. That goes all the way back to fairy tales. I mean, it's almost like Hansel and Gretel in my way of looking at it. And maybe Tarantino had seen Vamp or whatever, but I think, to me, it's almost a universal trope that he was falling back on.
Yeah, I could see that. I could also see a world in where he saw Vamp and enjoyed it and was like, hey, I can do something like this. And, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. But also, another movie it reminded me of Bordello of Blood, which is one of the Tales from the Crypt originals, where it's like, hey, they go to a whorehouse or whatever. And it's like, oh, they're all vampires. So, again, not something that's completely outside of the box when it comes to sort of vampire fables. But
and a lot of people compare this movie to Scorsese's After Hours.
Yeah. I've
the club is even called the After Hours Club. So, maybe it's sort of a nod to it.
Oh, interesting.
You can you can take any premise you want from any other thing and put your spin on it. And it's, that's how a lot of stuff is done.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of good artists borrow and are inspired by other artists. So, like, if you told me that Tarantino didn't know about this movie, I'd be like, yeah, okay. If you told me he watched it and liked it, I'd be like, yeah, okay. Makes sense. So I wouldn't say it's an outright theft, but a lot of things are very similar, and that's okay. Because I like both movies, so, oh well. So sue me. I'm allowed to like both.
The only thing you can't steal is actual text. Plagiarism. You can steal an idea. You can take any idea. I mean,
and it happens. But let's take a look. Well, let's head over to Critics Corner. And unfortunately, this movie has no Metascore. So there isn't an easy way for me to go through the critic scores the way I would normally do it. So instead, this is going to be the letterbox version of Critics Corner, which is going to be its own adventure. But we'll do the entire spectrum, starting with 1 star, ending with 5 stars. So we start like I said, with a 1-star review, and this is from Jose Alpizar. It says Grace Jones literally did not say a word in this film, and that's kind of iconic. So gave it a 1-star review, but praised Grace Jones's iconic performance. Interesting. Feels like it would warrant more than a star, but okay.
Maybe a disappointed Grace Jones fan. Who knows?
Oh, could be. Yeah.
Wanted more.
Yeah. All right. Well, for our 2-star review, we're going to go to Drew Hunt. It says there are dozens of other 80s horror comedies you should watch first, but when you knock those out, this one has a moment or two. So again, sort of like a bad review, but also like, yeah, watch it.
And that's right in line with what Siskel and Ebert said about it. Said there were good things in it, but by and large, that they gave it a thumbs down. There was more things they disliked, but they did credit it with having some good moments in it.
Did I read correctly that Ebert gave it 2 out of 4?
That sounds about right.
He's not a huge horror fan, so I mean, a 2 out of 4 from him feels like it's actually probably a better endorsement than you might think. And it looks like I didn't see Roper's on there, but we'll circle back to that. Let's go to our 3-star review, and this is from Damien. Just says campy, but kind of fun. Not gonna lie. So yeah, there you go. Yes, it is campy, but it is fun, and we're starting to see the momentum build up. Because this movie, I think I said I had a 3.1 on Letterboxd, so we're right in the majority of people's reviews here. So we go to Jacob, who gave it a 4-star review, says Fright Night with a little bit of From Dusk Till Dawn thrown in for good measure. Very fun, very cheesy 80s vampire flick. We'll definitely be rewatching this one. So there you go. You know, you mentioned Fright Night. We've talked about From Dusk Till Dawn. So I think, yeah, we're climbing the ladder. We're seeing people start to recognize like the movie is fun. It has some contemporaries that are also kind of fun, that when you sort of group them together, maybe the reputation is better than this standing alone in a vacuum. And then we're going to finish off with Kelsey, who gave it 5 stars. Her review just says, off to make my own fangs. So super happy. She loved it, and now she's making her own fangs. Yeah, exactly.
And that's where I think the real fan base of this movie is, that people who really like vampire movies, because I think if you're really into it, this movie delivers for you.
Yeah, and Variety, I think, gave it a positive review, saying it was extremely imaginative with a very good cast. And they cited Jones's dance as an outright showstopper. We see, the Washington Post called it stupid and crude. Sid Smith of the Chicago Tribune gave it 1.5 out of 4 stars, saying that the laughs were strained and the effects were ludicrous, which I just don't agree with. Well, no. And let's see, a review by Mark Finch in the Monthly Film Bulletin, never heard of that, but was generally positive, finding that although the concept of a club where the strippers possesses authority could have been explored more, quote, the film remains confident and agreeably scary without becoming lost in a swamp of movie buff jokes or out and out campiness. There you go. Okay. I like that one. It's a good way to close it out.
Yeah. I would say most of the mainstream critics who didn't like horror movies didn't like this movie. That's kind of how it broke down.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of seems like, like you said, 600 horror movies made in the 80s, right? That's a lot of horror movies. I'm sure there was a lot that were significantly worse than Vamp. And if you had been asked to watch a lot of those as part of your job, by the time that you got to Vamp, you probably weren't too thrilled about it. And in doing this show we're entering season 4 now. So over 3+ years, it's very easy to see that there's some critics who get sent to movies that they have no interest in going to see.
Exactly.
Their editor has sent them basically on a suicide mission to this movie. And you can tell they're angry before they even got there. The review is just like, it's so pointed in one direction that it's like, you probably just don't want to send that critic to that movie. But you know, they're getting paid, so they write the review, the editor publishes it, and we end up with a lot of like really, really, really negative reviews sometimes, where I feel like even when Ebert really disliked something, he was mostly fair to the things that he did like about it. It was very hard for him to watch a movie and be like, there was nothing of value in it.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I saw them do the end of year, like the worst movies of the year thing, and I watched him like be as animated about a movie he didn't like, he still was like, yeah, there's good stuff here, but like this one thing sort of bothered me. So it's like he felt like sort of like the right balance, and I understand why him and Roper became popular as a duo, because I feel like that they approached their reviews to film in a much more like palatable general public type of way.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave grace to the filmmakers. And maybe, you know, I don't remember when Valley of the Dolls got made, but I think the process of like making a movie for Ebert maybe gave him better perspective as how to like take the things that you like, and you can talk about those, and also like be constructively critical of the things you don't like. Whereas now we see it's sort of like the two opposite ends of the spectrum. It's like either this thing is a masterpiece or it's garbage, and like having any kind of conversation anywhere in between that is a bit of a struggle.
Well, that's kind of the influence of, I think, social media now,
for sure,
where you know everything's either a masterpiece or it's just garbage.
Mm-hmm.
But to be fair to Ebert, he liked Romero and Dawn of the Dead. He gave that a very positive review. But on the other hand, there was the infamous review they gave of the first Friday the 13th movie, where they give out an actress's address or whatever to just to let people know. No, I think it was Betsy Palmer, that she was in this. They just thought it was just degrading piece of trash that. You know,
so they doxed her.
So it was something like that from 1980, and they just that they if she had done pornography, they would have been more respectable.
Wow,
you know, they really hated that one.
Well, my buddy Scott Cole, who's been on the show a few times, he was just on the Christmas episode. Actually, he's a Ebert and Roper historian, so I'll ask him if he knows this story, and I'll get him to fill me in on the details. But yeah, I got to hear that. You know, if they really gave out her home address, like, it feels very petty and horrible.
It was something they did.
Somebody,
they went the extra mile to really show their disgust at or maybe they gave out her mailing address or something. But you know, they were
send all your fan mail
story
here.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, we've reached essentially the end here. I want to ask you now, what is a good gateway drug movie for Vamp? We've obviously talked about a lot of movies that have some similarities and that were obviously more popular, but is there something that you have in mind that's a good sort of launchpad movie for somebody that is trying to work their way to Vamp, but is maybe not ready to pull the trigger just yet?
Let's see. I don't know how popular they are anymore with younger generations, but some of the raunchy teen comedies from the 80s would be a good place to start to know where the comedy is coming from in this film. Some, you know,
Porky's
would be a good place. You know, any teen comedy set on a college. There were a lot of those. You know, it's
Revenge of the Nerds. Love that.
Yes,
one.
Would be a good one. And also check out the other really good vampire film we haven't mentioned from the 80s, which is Near Dark.
Great movie. Yeah.
Catherine Bigelow's first film.
No.
That has a sort of similar down and dirty, gritty vampire mythology to it.
Yeah. I like that pick. That's a good
Also
one.
has an evil vampire kid in it.
Mm-hmm.
Although it doesn't have a lot of comedy in it. It's much more of a straight out vampire film. But it takes puts a very American twist on the vampire legend.
Yeah, that's a good one. And, I was going to go a different direction initially because as I watched the movie, I was thinking like I could see some of the DNA of a movie like Species in this as well. But now that you mentioned it, I'm going to say John Carpenter's Vampires, because that movie does have like implicit comedy built into it, but is also very much like a serious vampire action horror film too. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to ultimately settle on, because I've always liked that movie. It's definitely like tonally different than this one. If I tried to find something that operated like sort of in the same tonal wavelength as this, I don't know that I could, but yeah, I'll say John Carpenter's Vampires. I love Carpenter. I love Wood's performance in that movie, so have fun with that one.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it in a while.
Do comedy, but don't do parody.
Yes,
you can inject levity into something, but respect the material, respect the genre, respect where it's coming from. Don't mock it. To me, that's where you lose me.
Yeah, it becomes disingenuous, and then it's like, well, what's the point now? So
yeah.
Well, speaking of the material and treating it seriously, you've got a couple of books, so I want to give you a chance to talk about your projects and let people know where they're able to find it. Of course, I'll make sure all that stuff is up and easily accessible in the show notes for anybody that listens, but please let us know what you're doing.
Yeah, I've written 2 alternate history novels, and I've got another one I hope to get out this year. One of them is called Beating Plowshares into Swords, which is an alternate history of the Vietnam War. And the other one I have done, which is one that most people are interested in, is called All the Way with JFK, an alternate history of 1964, where JFK survives the assassination attempt in Dallas, and I spin out a history timeline that goes forward from there. I mean, if you're really into, history and interested in the 1960s, I think you would enjoy these books.
How did you get into sort of like revisionist history like that?
Well, I've always been a history buff. I've always read a lot about history, and and I've always, you always like to play around with the what ifs, and what if JFK had survived is sort of a thing's been bandied about by other writers have written on it, and I want to kind of take my, Stephen King had done 11/22/63, which is a much more, to me, more of a time travel story novel than mine is. Not mine doesn't have those kind of sci-fi tropes in it. I just play it straight, where a couple of things change at a certain point and history goes in a different direction. And plus it was, there was so much research and source material you can use from the 1960s that makes it easy, gives you an awful lot to work with. You can do different things with the Vietnam War. You can do different things with the domestic situation in America in the 60s.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one I am working on to get out right now is one called World War Nixon, which is about Nixon and Watergate.
Oh,
and what if that had gone a little differently?
Interesting. You also have a vampire book, right?
Yes, I have a vampire.
Don't you want to talk about the vampire?
I have a vampire series called Big Crimson, which is, all of my books are available on Amazon. You can also find them on the Smashwords website too. They're for $2.99 for the ebook, which is nice and cheap. And yeah, my big Crimson book is a vampire story where the premise is there's a knock at a door one night, and there's a vampire on the other side who's being chased by his fellow vampires, and he wants to come in and get sanctuary. And that kicks off the story.
Interesting.
And it's sort of a small town horror, part of that kind of genre, where you have an inciting incident, the vampire arrives, and then things go from there.
Cool. I like that. Knock at the door, it's a vampire.
Yeah, I took sort of the I don't want to compare it to Salem's Lot, but it is that kind of small town vampire horror story where things just sort of begin to escalate and escalate and escalate, where the supernatural is injected into this small town and things go from there. And it's kind of this down and dirty kind of characters. There's no chosen ones, no vampire hunters, no things like that. It's just kind of like average, everyday people who suddenly are confronted with the supernatural. I like that kind of genre a lot, where it works.
Cool. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, and I've got an idea for another vampire series I may start outlining very soon.
All right. Well, we can tell that you love vampires. I appreciate that you treat the lore with respect and dignity. So I look forward to it. Is this stuff that you self-published, or like how did you go about writing all this stuff?
I'm a self-published writer. A lot of times the traditional publishing, that is a very frustrating and very hard thing to break through. So I just decided to try my luck at that. I haven't gotten rich doing it, but I do make sales. I make sales every month on what I put out, which is a lot better than some people do. I work very hard to make it as professional as possible. You've got to do it all yourself. Well,
I know what
you've
that's
got
like.
to hire the proofreader, the reader, the editor. You've got to hire and get the covers made. You've got to do all the setup to publish it yourself. I mean, it is not a case of where you just sit down and type out a bunch of stuff in a Word document and, go over to Amazon KDP and just hit upload and publish. It is a process that you have to do, and you have, and if you want to be successful, you have to make it as professional as possible, which means you got to read your manuscript 10 or 15 times to get all your errors and grammatical misspellings and stuff out of there, even before you can even think of sending it to a proofreader. And then there's promotion, which is a whole that's a thing in and of itself, where you have to try to solicit readers who will post reviews, because that's how you get your book noticed. And there are book review sites, and some are good, some methods work, some methods don't. Some methods used to work 5 and 10 years ago, don't work very well now. Some social media platforms are better than others. Some, you wind up beating your head against a wall a lot of times just to get 1 or 2 sales. But, when it does pay off, you feel like it's worth it. When you get that one review out of the blue that's, 5 stars.
Yeah.
Feels
good.
There's a tremendous amount of satisfaction that comes with it.
Awesome. Well, maybe you and I get together again in the future and we talk specifically about writing and books and publishing and all that.
I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that.
Every
self-published writer has a story to tell and how to spew about lots of things.
So yes, give me a chance. Maybe I'll take some time. I'll read at least one of your books, and then we'll chat after that. Okay, so I want to at least show you the respect of reading one of them before we hop into the next thing, because it's like, yeah, I could of course outline questions for you just like as a curious person, but I'd rather have something under my belt where we can actually talk a little bit more in depth about it. So cool. Well, it's been a pleasure, Fred. I'm so glad that we're able to make this work. I'm glad that we got connected. I'm so glad I got to watch Vamp, because I don't know if I ever would have just voluntarily watched this. I don't know if I ever would have stumbled across it. I mean, it's not Halloween. It's not the summer. So it's not either of the two sweet spots for this movie. But I'm really glad that I got a chance to watch it and to chat with you about it.
It has a cult following, but it's not nearly well known enough as it should be. And I hope we have introduced it to new viewers. That would be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, in 363 days, it'll be 2026. I'm sorry that I just said that to everybody, but it will be the 40th anniversary of Vamp. And maybe we will sort of be in new territory for reappraisal. Maybe we already had the 30th anniversary. They released the Blu-ray special. So maybe at 40 years, this movie really it gets its place in the sun, so to speak.
I hope so. And I'd love to come back and talk some more bad movies with you anytime.
Oh, absolutely. I've got to get my calendar sorted, but I think for sure this is going to come out this month, and then we'll work on the next one, but we could be looking at as early as March maybe. So we'll be in touch, and we'll chat some other options, and we'll go from there.
Okay. I'm game for anything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it too.
Cool. We'll take care, and we'll talk soon.
Big thanks to Fred for coming on the show and bringing me a cult classic and a favorite of his that I'd never seen. One of my favorite things about this show is getting to find new movies. It really helps expand my horizons overall, and I hope it does the same for you. If you had fun hanging out with us, you can find Fred's work on Amazon and Smashwords, and you can get in touch with him on X at FCSNVA. But don't fret, all of that will be up conveniently in the show notes for you. I'm not sure which episode is coming down the pipe next. It's either going to be My Boyfriend's Back or Wolf Cop 2, Another Wolf Cop, but it's going to be a good one either way. And of course, thank you to everyone who took the time to listen to this episode. I know there's a seemingly infinite number of options when it comes to podcasts, and I appreciate you letting me into your ear holes and hopefully into your hearts. In all seriousness, time is valuable, and I'm very grateful that you've entrusted me with it. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving a rating and telling a friend about it, subscribing on your podcast platform of choice, and if you don't enjoy it, that can be our little secret. The new members-only section is now live at badmovieswelove.captivate.com/support. Sign up now to become an official card-carrying member of the Resistance and get access to exclusive bonus episodes for new sub-series Bad Movie Futures, Rom-Comathon, and Baimon Sci-Fi Con. I would love to hear from you, so if you have a bad movie you love and would like to be a guest on the show or not, you can contact me at badmovieswelove@theshice.com or badmoviesweluv on Twitter and Instagram. Until next time, take care, be well, and have fun however you get your movies.